The invitation never came. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the cream-colored envelope that had arrived 3 weeks ago. An invitation to my neighbor's grandson's graduation party. Even strangers thought to include me in their celebrations. Yet my own son, Marcus, the one whose business launch I had funded with my late husband's life insurance money, hadn't bothered to send me so much as a text. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The morning light filtered through my kitchen window, casting long shadows across the mahogany table Richard and I had bought 32 years ago. Everything in this house carried his memory, but lately, those memories felt more like ghosts than comfort. At 63, I had become invisible to my own family, a checkbook with a pulse. My fingers traced the rim of my coffee cup, the good china I saved for special occasions that never seemed to come anymore. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, echoing with the absence of phone calls that should have come, visits that should have happened, grandchildren's laughter that should have filled these rooms. Marcus had called exactly once in the past month, and that was to ask for the final payment on his restaurant equipment. "Mom, the suppliers need the last $15,000 by Friday or they won't deliver." "No, please. No, thank you. No invitation to see what my money had built. Just a demand wrapped in the thin veneer of necessity. I had given him everything, not just the money, but years of emotional support through his failed attempts at various careers. The photography studio that lasted 6 months, the consulting business that existed only on paper, the food truck venture that ended when he rear-ended a city bus. Each time I had been there with my checkbook and my reassurances, watching my savings dwindle while his promises multiplied. Richard would have seen through it. He always could read Marcus better than I could, even when our son was small. "You're too soft with him, Elena," he used to say. "You're teaching him that consequences are optional." But Richard had been gone for 5 years now, and in his absence, I had become both mother and father, enabler and safety net, until I had lost myself entirely in the process. The phone buzzed against the table. A text from my daughter-in-law, Sarah. "Busy week with the launch prep. We'll call you soon." The heart emoji felt like a Band-Aid over a wound that had been festering for months. Sarah, with her perfectly curated Instagram life and her way of making everything sound like an afterthought, had mastered the art of saying nothing while appearing to care. I scrolled through Marcus's social media instead, something I had promised myself I wouldn't do. There it was, post after post about Coastal Catch, the seafood restaurant that was supposed to be his dream come true, pictures of gleaming kitchen equipment, the renovated dining room with its nautical theme, staff training sessions. In every photo, Marcus beamed with the confidence of a man who believed he had built something from nothing. But I knew better. I had the bank statements to prove it. The launch party was tomorrow night. I had seen the Facebook event page with its elegant graphics and carefully worded invitation. "Join us for an exclusive preview evening at Coastal Catch. Limited seating by invitation only." 237 people were marked as attending. I was not among them. When I had asked Marcus about it 3 weeks ago, his response had been casual, dismissive. "Oh, Mom, it's really just a business thing. Industry people, investors, nothing you'd be interested in. We'll have a family dinner soon to celebrate." Okay, industry people, investors. I had invested more in Coastal Catch than anyone else in that room would tomorrow night. Yet, I was deemed uninteresting, irrelevant, a check writer, not a stakeholder, a mother, not a partner. The irony wasn't lost on me. Richard and I had owned a small restaurant ourselves back when Marcus was in high school, Rico's Kitchen, named after Richard's nickname and my grandmother's recipes. We had worked 18-hour days, sacrificed vacations, poured our hearts into every dish that left the kitchen. Marcus used to complain about the smell of garlic on my clothes, the way I was always too tired for his school events because I had been on my feet since dawn. Now he was living my life using my money without acknowledging where either had come from. I walked to Richard's study, a room I had kept exactly as he left it. His reading glasses still lay folded on his desk next to a half-finished crossword puzzle. On the bookshelf, between his collection of culinary magazines and restaurant trade journals, sat a framed photo from Rico's Kitchen's 5th anniversary, Richard's arm around my waist. Both of us exhausted but proud, a flower in my hair and a sauce stain on his apron. We had sold Rico's when Richard got sick, using the proceeds to buy this house and secure our retirement. The life insurance money that came later was supposed to be my safety net, my independence, my security in old age. Instead, I had handed it over piece by piece, watching my future dissolve into Marcus's repeated failures. The house phone rang, its shrill sound cutting through my memories. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Maybe Marcus had reconsidered. Maybe the invitation was coming after all. Mrs. Vega. The voice was unfamiliar, professional. This is Jennifer from Coastal Marketing. I'm calling to confirm your attendance at tomorrow night's launch event for Coastal Catch Restaurant. We have you down as a VIP guest. My heart stopped. I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. I didn't receive an invitation. Oh. A pause. The sound of papers shuffling. Let me check. Yes, you're listed here as Elena Vega, primary investor. The invitation should have been sent to your address on Maple Street 3 weeks ago. Primary investor. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even the marketing company knew who I was, what I had contributed. Everyone except my own son. Ma'am, are you still there? Yes, I managed. Yes, I'm here. Would you like me to rescind the invitation? Or I can confirm your attendance now if you'd prefer. You're entitled to bring a guest, and we have you at the head table with the owner and his family. The head table? With the owner and his family? I was the family he had forgotten to include. Mrs. Vega. My voice came out steadier than I felt. No, thank you. I won't be attending. After I hung up, I sat in Richard's chair and wept. Not the gentle tears of grief I had grown accustomed to, but the angry, bitter tears of betrayal. My son had erased me from his success story, reduced me to a footnote he hoped no one would notice. The marketing company knew I belonged at the head table. The suppliers knew I had paid their invoices. But Marcus had decided I was an embarrassment, a burden, a mother who didn't fit the image of the successful restaurateur he wanted to project. I picked up my phone and typed a text to Marcus. Coastal Marketing called. Interesting conversation. Then I deleted it. Instead I wrote, hope the launch goes well tomorrow. I'll follow the website for news. I hit send before I could change my mind. The message was simple, polite, and devastating in its restraint. It said everything I couldn't bear to say directly. I know what you did. I know you excluded me deliberately. I know exactly what I mean to you now. His response came within minutes. Thanks, Mom. Love you. Love you. 2 words that meant nothing when they came without respect, without inclusion, without the basic consideration any human being deserved from their child. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine, the good wine I had been saving for Marcus's success. If he wanted to celebrate without me, I would toast to something else entirely. Outside, the sun was setting over the suburban street where I had raised my son, where I had taught him to ride a bike and helped with homework at the same kitchen table. Somewhere across town, he was putting the finishing touches on a restaurant that existed because of my sacrifice, preparing for a party that would celebrate his achievement while pretending I had never existed. Tomorrow, while Marcus basked in congratulations for his business acumen, I would be signing papers. Not for another loan, not for another investment in his future. I would be signing papers that would change everything. But tonight, I would sit with my wine and my memories and my rage, and I would plan exactly how to reclaim what was mine. The papers were spread across my dining room table like pieces of a puzzle I was finally ready to solve. David Martinez, my attorney, had arrived at 9 sharp. his briefcase heavy with documents that would reshape everything Marcus thought he understood about his success. "Are you certain about this, Elena?" David asked, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the final contract. "Once we execute this conversion, there's no going back. You'll hold 51% of Coastal Catch permanently." I signed my name with the same Mont Blanc pen Richard had given me for our 20th anniversary. Each stroke felt like a small act of revolution. I've never been more certain of anything. The irony was delicious. When Marcus had begged for the initial investment, he had been so desperate, so grateful that he would have signed anything I put in front of him. The partnership agreement I had drafted with David's help gave him operational control, but included a clause that allowed me to convert my provisional majority into permanent ownership once certain conditions were met. A safety net, I had told myself then, a way to protect my investment. Marcus had never bothered to read the fine print. He had assumed, as he always did, that his mother was too naive, too trusting, too blinded by maternal love to protect her own interests. He had signed away his control without realizing it, too focused on the immediate injection of cash to consider the long-term implications. The timing couldn't be better, David continued, organizing the documents into neat stacks. With the launch happening tonight, the restaurant will be at maximum visibility. Local press, food bloggers, potential investors, everyone will be watching. My phone buzzed against the table. A photo from Sarah's Instagram. Marcus and his chef's whites, arms, crossed confidently in front of Coastal Catch's gleaming sign. The caption read, "Dreams do come true when you work hard and believe in yourself. So proud of my incredible husband." Coastal Catch, where dreams come true, were hard worked blessed. As if the $70,000 I had invested was somehow secondary to his belief in himself. "Elena." David's voice pulled me back to the present. "The reporter from the Tribune will be there at 8:30. Are you sure you want to do the interview?" I had called Janet Morrison that morning, leveraging a friendship that dated back to our children's elementary school days. Janet was now the food editor at the city's largest newspaper, and she had been intrigued by my story, a mother who had financed her son's restaurant only to be excluded from its launch. It was exactly the kind of human interest piece that would resonate with her readers. "I'm sure," I said, though my hands trembled slightly as I gathered the signed documents. It's time people knew the real story behind Coastal Catch's success. By late afternoon, I had reconsidered. The interview with Janet changed everything. After David left, I spent the afternoon preparing for battle. I chose my outfit carefully. An amber dress that Richard had always said brought out my eyes, paired with the pearl earrings he had given me for our 25th anniversary. I wanted to look dignified, maternal, hurt, but not bitter. The image of a betrayed mother was far more sympathetic than that of an angry investor. At 6, I drove to Coastal Catch for the first time since Marcus had taken possession of the space. The restaurant sat on the corner of Harbor Street and 3rd Avenue, its large windows glowing warmly against the early evening sky. The exterior had been painted a soft blue-gray that reminded me of storm clouds, with white trim that caught the light from the vintage street lamps Marcus had insisted were essential to the ambiance. It was beautiful. I had to admit that even through my rage, Marcus had always had good taste when spending other people's money. Cars were already arriving, well-dressed couples emerging with the kind of casual confidence that came from being exactly where they belonged. I recognized some faces from Marcus's social media posts. Local food critics, successful restaurateurs, minor celebrities who added cachet to any opening night. I parked across the street and waited, watching through my windshield as my son's dream came to life without me. Through the restaurant's large windows, I could see Marcus working the room, shaking hands and accepting congratulations with the easy charm he had inherited from his father. Sarah stood beside him in a stunning black cocktail dress, her smile never faltering as she played the perfect, supportive wife. They looked like a power couple, young entrepreneurs who had built something magnificent through their own determination and vision. The narrative was clean, inspiring, completely divorced from the reality of where their startup capital had come from. At 8:15, Janet arrived. I recognized her silver BMW immediately. She had driven it to every school function for 10 years. She spotted me across the street and waved, then made her way over with the quick, purposeful stride of a woman who had learned to navigate any room. "Elena," she said, sliding into my passenger seat. "You look good. I'm sorry about Richard." "Thank you." We had covered this ground at the funeral 5 years ago, but I appreciated the acknowledgement. "Thank you for coming, Janet. I know this is unusual. Unusual is what makes good stories." She pulled out her phone and opened the voice recorder app. "Tell me what happened. Start from the beginning." So, I did. I told her about Marcus's failed ventures, about the life insurance money. That was supposed to secure my future, about the partnership agreement that gave me majority ownership. I told her about being excluded from tonight's celebration, about learning from the marketing company that I was listed as the primary investor while my own son pretended I didn't exist. Janet's expression grew more serious as I spoke. "Do you have documentation for all of this?" I handed her copies of the bank transfers, the partnership agreement, the marketing company's guest list, with my name prominently featured. "Everything is verified. David Martinez handled the legal aspects, and Marcus has no idea you're here. None." I looked across the street at the restaurant, which was now packed with guests. "He thinks I'm at home, following along on the website like a distant fan." Janet followed my gaze. "What do you want from this, Elena? What's your endgame?" It was a fair question, one I had asked myself repeatedly over the past 24 hours. Revenge was too simple a word for what I wanted. Justice was closer, but still inadequate. What I wanted was recognition, not just of my financial contribution, but of my worth as a human being, as a mother, as someone who deserved basic respect and consideration. "I want people to know the truth," I said finally. "I want Marcus to understand that actions have consequences. I want him to realize that treating people as disposable isn't sustainable, even when those people love you unconditionally." Janet nodded, making notes on her phone. "Can we go inside? I'd like to get some photos, interview a few guests, see Marcus's reaction when he realizes you're there." My stomach clenched at the thought. This was the point of no return. The moment when I would step from the shadows and claim my place in the story Marcus was trying to tell. Once I walked through those doors, there would be no pretending this was all a misunderstanding. No way to smooth things over with family dinners and forced reconciliations. "Elena," Janet was watching me carefully. "We don't have to do this if you're not ready." But I was ready. I had been ready since the moment I realized my son valued my money more than my presence, my checkbook more than my heart. "Let's go," I said. The restaurant's interior was even more impressive than its exterior. Exposed brick walls were decorated with vintage maritime artifacts, and soft lighting cast everything in a warm, welcoming glow. The bar was crafted from reclaimed shipwood, and the open kitchen design allowed guests to watch the chefs at work. It was exactly the kind of place Richard and I had dreamed of creating when we were young and optimistic about the restaurant business. Marcus had used my memories as well as my money. I moved through the crowd slowly, Janet trailing behind with her photographer. No one recognized me immediately. Why would they? I was the invisible investor, the forgotten partner, the mother who didn't merit an invitation to her own son's success. Then I saw him. Marcus was holding court near the bar, gesturing animatedly as he described the restaurant's farm-to-table philosophy to a group of food bloggers. He looked confident, successful, completely in control of his destiny. Sarah spotted me first. Her face went pale, her practiced smile faltering for just a moment before she recovered her composure. She whispered something to Marcus, who turned. To look in my direction, the color drained from his face. For a moment, we stared at each other across the crowded restaurant. Mother and son, investor and entrepreneur, betrayer and betrayed. In his eyes, I saw confusion, panic, and something that might have been shame if I was feeling generous. Then he started moving toward me, pushing through the crowd with barely concealed desperation. "Mom," he said when he reached me, his voice tight with false cheer. "What a surprise! I didn't know you were coming." "Neither did your marketing company," I replied calmly. "They were quite confused when they called to confirm my attendance as your primary investor." His face cycled through several emotions: guilt, anger, calculation. Around us, conversations continued. But I could feel the subtle shift in attention that occurs when people sense drama brewing. "Mom, let's go somewhere quiet and talk about this," Marcus said, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. "Actually, Marcus, I think it's time we talked about this publicly. After all, transparency is so important in business relationships, don't you think?" Janet appeared at my elbow, her press badge clearly visible, her photographer, ready with his camera. Marcus Vega, Janet Morrison from the Tribune. "I was hoping to ask you a few questions about your mother's role in Coastal Catch's success story." The expression on my son's face was worth every dollar I had invested, and we were just getting started. Marcus's laugh came out strangled, artificial. "Oh, Janet, you know how it is with family businesses. Everyone contributes in their own way." "Is that how you describe a $70,000 investment?" I asked quietly, my voice carrying just far enough for the nearby guests to hear. As everyone contributes in their own way, the photographer's camera flashed. Conversations around us began to falter as people tuned into what was clearly becoming more than a friendly family reunion. Sarah materialized at Marcus's side, her hand sliding possessively around his arm, her smile so rigid it looked painful. "Mrs. Vega," Sarah said, with the kind of forced warmth that fooled no one. "How wonderful that you could make it after all. Marcus was just telling me how busy you've been lately." "Busy signing papers?" I replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "Legal documents can be so time-consuming." Janet's pen moved across her notepad. "Mrs. Vega, can you tell me about your role in financing Coastal Catch?" Before I could answer, Marcus jumped in. "Mom has been incredibly supportive of our venture. We're so grateful for her belief in us." "Supportive enough to provide the entire startup capital," Janet pressed. The question hung in the air like smoke around us. I could feel the shift in the room's energy as more people became aware that something significant was happening. A local food blogger pulled out his phone, presumably to live stream whatever drama was about to unfold. Marcus's jaw worked silently for a moment. Then he forced another laugh. "Family businesses are complicated. Janet, I'm sure you understand." "What I understand," I said, my voice calm but carrying clearly through the restaurant, "is that I invested $70,000 in this establishment. What I understand is that I hold majority ownership in Coastal Catch. What I don't understand is why the primary investor wasn't invited to the launch of her own restaurant." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. Several people nearby had stopped pretending not to listen and were now openly staring. The food blogger's eyes widened as he adjusted his phone to capture better audio. "Mom," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "What are you doing?" "I'm claiming my place at the table you forgot to set for me," I replied. Sarah's composure finally cracked. "Elena, this is Marcus's night, his dream. Can't we discuss business matters at a more appropriate time?" "When would be appropriate, Sarah? When would be a good time to acknowledge that this dream was built on my late husband's life insurance money? When would be convenient to mention that without my investment, there would be no Coastal Catch?" The restaurant had grown noticeably quieter. Even the kitchen staff seemed to have slowed their movements, sensing the tension that was spreading through the dining room like spilled wine. Janet stepped closer, her recorder held discreetly, but positioned to catch every word. "Mrs. Vega, Were you intentionally excluded from tonight's event? I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, opening it to the Facebook event page for Coastal Catch's launch. 237 people were invited to celebrate the opening of this restaurant. The marketing company called to confirm my attendance as a VIP guest and primary investor. But according to my son, I wouldn't be interested in attending a business function. Marcus's face had gone from pale to flushed. "Mom, you're taking this out of context." "Am I?" I interrupted. "Then perhaps you can provide the context. Explain to everyone here how a 63-year-old widow who has been out of the restaurant industry for years became the primary investor in Coastal Catch. Explain how her financial contribution somehow makes her less worthy of an invitation than—" I gestured around the room. 236 other people. The photographer's camera continued to flash. A server carrying a tray of appetizers had stopped mid-stride, clearly torn between professional duty and fascination with the unfolding drama. "Mrs. Vega," Janet said, "can you walk me through the investment process? How did this partnership begin?" Marcus shot Janet a look that could have curdled milk. "This really isn't the time or place." "When Marcus's food truck business failed 2 years ago," I continued, ignoring my son's interruption, "he came to me with a new dream. He wanted to open a restaurant. He had found the perfect location. He said he had a solid business plan. He just needed startup capital." I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. The restaurant was now almost silent except for the soft jazz playing through the sound system and the distant clatter from the kitchen. "I was hesitant," I continued. "This wasn't his first failed venture, but he was my son, and he seemed so certain this time would be different. So I agreed to invest my late husband's life insurance money. Money that was supposed to secure my retirement, my future, my independence." Sarah's hand tightened on Marcus's arm. Her knuckles had gone white. "The partnership agreement was clear," I said, pulling out a folded document from my purse. "I would provide the capital. Marcus would handle operations, and ownership would be split according to investment. $70,000 bought me 51% of Coastal Catch." Janet leaned in, and Marcus was aware of these terms. He signed the agreement. I held up the contract, its pages clearly visible to the photographer's camera, though I suspect he never bothered to read it carefully. He was too focused on getting the money to pay attention to the details. Marcus finally found his voice. "Mom, you're embarrassing yourself. This is my business, my restaurant." "No, Marcus." My voice cut through his protest with surgical precision. "This is my restaurant. I own it. You work for me." The words landed like a thunderclap. Several guests exchanged glances, their expressions ranging from shock to fascination to barely concealed glee at witnessing such spectacular family dysfunction. A tall man in an expensive suit approached our group. I recognized him from Marcus's social media posts. David Hughes, the food critic from City Magazine, one of the most influential voices in the local dining scene. "Excuse me," he said politely. "I couldn't help but overhear." "Mrs. Vega, is it? I'm David Hughes from City Magazine. Are you saying that you're the actual owner of Coastal Catch?" "I'm saying I'm the majority owner. Yes. My son is the operational manager." David's eyebrows rose. "That's quite unusual for a launch event. Typically, we'd expect to meet all the key stakeholders, especially the majority owner." Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear into the reclaimed shipwood flooring. "David, this is just a family misunderstanding." "Is it?" David pulled out his own phone, opening what looked like a note-taking app. "Mrs. Vega, what's your background in the restaurant industry?" "My late husband and I owned Rico's Kitchen for 15 years. We sold it when he became ill, but I learned the business from the ground up, every aspect of it." "So you're not just an investor, you're an experienced restaurateur." "I am." David turned to Marcus. "And you felt it wasn't necessary to mention your mother's involvement in your marketing materials?" The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again without producing any sound. Sarah stepped forward, her PR instincts finally kicking in. What Marcus means is that he wanted tonight to focus on the culinary vision and the guest experience. Business details can be so dry. You know, business details, I repeated softly. Is that what I am now, Sarah? A dry business detail? Elena, you know that's not what I meant. What did you mean? I asked. When you posted on Instagram about dreams coming true through hard work and belief, did you mean the hard work of asking your mother-in-law for her life savings? Did you mean believing that she'd be too polite to mention her contribution publicly? The photographer captured Sarah's stricken expression perfectly. Janet stepped closer to me. Mrs. Vega, what do you plan to do with your ownership position? It was the question everyone was waiting for, the moment that would determine whether this was simply an embarrassing family spat or something with real consequences. Marcus and Sarah were both staring at me with undisguised terror, finally understanding that their carefully constructed narrative was crumbling in real time. I looked around the restaurant, at the beautiful space my money had created, at the guests who were witnessing the collapse of my son's deception, at the reporters who would carry this story beyond the walls of Coastal Catch. I plan to exercise my rights as majority owner, I said simply. Starting tomorrow, there will be some changes in how this establishment is managed. Marcus stepped toward me, desperation clear in his eyes. Mom, please, can we talk about this privately? This doesn't have to. My phone rang, cutting through his plea. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but something told me to answer it. Mrs. Vega. The voice was young, female, uncertain. This is Carmen Rodriguez. I'm calling about the job posting for Coastal Catch. I saw the news story online, and I wanted to speak with the actual owner about a management position. I looked at Marcus, whose face had gone ashen. News story? It's already trending on social media, Carmen continued. The whole thing with you being the secret investor. My grandmother went through something similar with her family business. I'd love to work for someone who knows what it's like to be underestimated. The phone felt warm in my hand as I realized the implications. This wasn't just about tonight anymore. This was about tomorrow and the day after that, and all the days that would follow when I would no longer be invisible. I'll be in tomorrow. Morning at 9, I told Carmen, my eyes never leaving Marcus's face. We can discuss the position then. As I hung up, I saw my son's world reshaping itself around the reality he had tried so hard to deny. And I was just getting started. The next morning, I arrived at Coastal Catch at 8:30, 30 minutes before my appointment with Carmen Rodriguez. The restaurant looked different in the harsh light of day, smaller somehow, less magical without the warm glow of evening lighting and the excitement of opening night. The staff was cleaning up from the previous evening, their movements slow and subdued. Marcus's car was already in the parking lot. I found him in the kitchen, slumped over a cup of coffee at the stainless steel prep counter. He looked like he hadn't slept, his chef's whites wrinkled and stained, his usually carefully styled hair disheveled. When he saw me, he straightened, with visible effort. Mom, his voice was hoarse, we need to talk. Yes, we do. I set my purse on the counter and looked around the kitchen, my kitchen, legally speaking. But first, I have an interview to conduct. An interview? He stood up too quickly, nearly knocking over his coffee. Mom, you can't just... I can't. What, Marcus? Run my own business, make hiring decisions for the restaurant I own? The kitchen staff had noticed our presence and were trying to look busy while obviously listening to every word. I lowered my voice, not out of consideration for Marcus, but because there was no need to humiliate the employees who had done nothing wrong. We'll discuss this after my 9:00 appointment, I said. I suggest you use that time to think very carefully about what you want to say to me. Carmen Rodriguez arrived precisely at 9. She was younger than I had expected, perhaps 28, with intelligent dark eyes and the kind of confident handshake that suggested she knew exactly what she was worth. She had done her homework. That much. was clear from the folder of references and certifications she carried. "Mrs. Vega," she said, as I led her to a quiet corner booth. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. I have to say what you did last night took incredible courage." "Courage," I repeated, testing the word. "I'm not sure that's what I'd call it." "What would you call it?" I considered the question while I poured coffee from the pot I had asked one of the servers to prepare. "Self-respect, maybe? A long overdue reality check." Carmen smiled. "My grandmother would like you. She spent 40 years building a catering business only to have her sons try to push her out when it became profitable. She fought back, though, and taught me that sometimes you have to remind people who you are. Tell me about your experience." For the next 20 minutes, Carmen walked me through her background. She had managed 3 restaurants over the past 6 years, increasing revenue at each one. She understood food costs, labor management, and customer service. More importantly, she understood the delicate balance between ambition and practicality that made the difference between a successful restaurant and a beautiful failure. "Why Coastal Catch?" I asked. "You could work anywhere." "Because I want to work for someone who earned her position instead of inheriting it," she said simply. "Someone who understands that respect is earned, not assumed." Through the kitchen's pass-through window, I could see Marcus pacing behind the line, his agitation obvious even from a distance. Sarah had arrived and was sitting at the bar, her phone pressed to her ear, probably doing damage control with their social circle. "The position I'm offering is Assistant General Manager," I told Carmen. "You'd be reporting directly to me with authority over daily operations, staff scheduling, and vendor relations. The current operational manager," I gestured toward Marcus, "would continue to handle the kitchen and menu development, but under your oversight." Carmen's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a significant reorganization." "Yes, it is. And the current operational manager is on board with this." I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. "The current operational manager will learn to be on board with it." After Carmen left with a start date of Monday morning and a salary that reflected her experience, I called Marcus over to the booth. He approached like a man walking to his own execution, Sarah trailing behind him with the defeated posture of someone who knew the battle was already lost. "Sit," I said. They sat. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The restaurant was quiet, except for the soft clatter of dishes being washed in the back and the hum of the refrigeration units. Outside, Harbor Street was beginning to come alive with morning traffic and early shoppers. "I hired an assistant general manager," I said finally. "She starts Monday." Marcus's hands clenched on the table. "Mom, you can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. "I own this restaurant, Marcus, legally, ethically, and morally. Everything you've built here exists because I chose to believe in you, to invest in your dream, to risk my financial security for your success." "I know that," he said quietly. "I've always been grateful." "Have you?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Because gratitude doesn't exclude people from their own investment. Gratitude doesn't treat contributors as embarrassments, to be hidden. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. "Elena, maybe we all said and did things last night that we regret." "I regret nothing," I said flatly. "I regret enabling this situation for so long, but I regret nothing about last night." Marcus looked up, and for a moment I saw a flash of the little boy he had been, confused, hurt, looking to his mother to make everything right. But that little boy had grown into a man who thought love meant endless second chances without consequences. "What do you want from me?" he asked. It was the same question Janet had asked me the night before, and I had spent the sleepless hours since then formulating my answer. "I want acknowledgement," I said, "not just of my financial contribution, but of my experience, my judgment, my worth as a partner in this venture. I want to be treated as an equal stakeholder, not as a checkbook with maternal instincts. And if I don't agree?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus was testing me, trying to determine if I was serious about exercising my authority or if this was just an elaborate performance designed to extract an apology. Then you'll learn what it means to work for someone who doesn't share your DNA, I said calmly. Carmen Rodriguez has my full authority to run this restaurant as she sees fit. You can choose to work with her, or you can choose to find employment elsewhere, Sarah gasped. You can't fire your own son. I can absolutely fire an employee who refuses to respect the chain of command, I replied. Family relationships don't grant immunity from professional consequences. Marcus was staring at me with an expression I had never seen before. A mixture of shock, respect, and something that might have been fear. For the first time in his adult life, he was beginning to understand that his actions had limits, that his mother's love didn't translate to unlimited tolerance. I never meant to exclude you, he said finally. I thought you wouldn't be interested in the business side of things. Why? Because you never said anything when I was growing up about Rico's Kitchen, about wanting to be involved. You and Dad just did everything. I thought you were happy to let him handle the business while you focused on the cooking. The admission hit me with unexpected force. All those years, while Richard and I had worked to build our restaurant, Marcus had been watching, learning the wrong lessons. He had seen my willingness to work behind the scenes as a lack of ambition rather than partnership. He had interpreted my focus on the kitchen as disinterest in leadership rather than a division of labor based on our respective strengths. Your father and I were partners, I said softly. Equal partners. We divided responsibilities based on what we were good at, not based on what we cared about. I cared about every aspect of that business. I didn't know, Marcus said, and for the first time, he sounded genuinely remorseful rather than just sorry he'd been caught. You didn't ask, I replied. You assumed, just like you assumed I'd be content to fund your dream without being part of it. Sarah reached across the table, her hand stopping just short of mine. We can fix this, Elena. We can make this right. Can you? I asked. Can you undo last night? Can you take back the months of being excluded from decisions about my own investment? Can you retroactively invite me to the launch of the restaurant I made possible? Neither of them answered. I thought not, I said. But we can move forward. On my terms. I pulled out a folder I had prepared that morning with David's help. These are the new operational guidelines for Coastal Catch. Carmen will have authority over all front-of-house operations, scheduling, vendor relations, and financial oversight. Marcus, you'll continue to manage the kitchen and develop the menu. But all major decisions will require my approval and Carmen's implementation. Marcus flipped through the pages, his expression growing more strained with each paragraph. This is like being demoted in my own restaurant. This is like being held accountable in my restaurant, I corrected. You can accept these terms and continue as head chef under Carmen's management, or you can tender your resignation and pursue opportunities elsewhere. And if I choose to resign? I met his eyes steadily. Then you'll leave with my blessing, a good reference, and the knowledge that your mother loves you enough to let you fail on your own terms rather than succeed on mine. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside, I could hear the sounds of a city waking up, car doors slamming, footsteps on pavement, the distant rumble of delivery trucks, normal sounds of normal people living normal lives. Unaware that 3 blocks away, a family was reconfiguring itself around the uncomfortable reality of respect. Marcus closed the folder and looked at me with something approaching recognition. I need time to think, he said. You have until Monday. Morning, I replied. That's when Carmen starts, with or without your cooperation. As I gathered my things to leave, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mrs. Vega, this is Tony Castellanos from KQDN Radio. We'd love to interview you about family businesses and generational wealth transfer. Would you be available this afternoon? I showed the message to Marcus and Sarah, watching their faces as they realized this story was far from over. Fame is an interesting thing, I said, standing to leave. Sometimes it finds you when you're least expecting it. The morning sun was warm on my face as I walked to my car, leaving my son to contemplate the new reality I had created. Behind me, Coastal Catch sat quiet and gleaming, waiting to see what it would become under its true owner's guidance. 3 months later, I stood in the same corner booth where I had interviewed Carmen, watching her coordinate the evening service with the quiet confidence of someone who had found her place in the world. The restaurant hummed with the kind of controlled energy that came from good management and clear expectations. Coastal Catch had changed since that dramatic opening night, though not in ways visible to casual observers. The menu remained largely the same, the decor unchanged, the maritime theme intact. But beneath the surface, everything was different. The staff moved with purpose rather than uncertainty. Orders flowed smoothly from kitchen to table. Customer complaints had dropped to nearly zero, while online reviews consistently praised the seamless service and attention to detail. Marcus emerged from the kitchen carrying a plate of his signature seafood risotto, his movements economical and focused. He had lost weight over the past 3 months. His face was leaner, his expression more serious. Gone was the easy charm that had masked his underlying insecurity. In its place was something harder, more substantial, the demeanor of a man who had learned to earn his position rather than assume it. "Table 12 wants to know about wine pairings," he said to Carmen as he passed the booth where I sat, reviewing the quarterly financials. "I'll send Jennifer over," Carmen replied without looking up from her tablet. "She just finished the summer course?" Marcus nodded and returned to the kitchen without the resentful glance he might have given 3 months ago when Carmen's authority was still new and uncomfortable. The transition hadn't been easy. There had been tense conversations, wounded, pride, and moments when I thought he might choose resignation over reconstruction. But gradually, he had begun to understand what I had always known, that competence commanded respect in ways that family connections never could. "How are we looking?" I asked Carmen, gesturing to her tablet. "October was our best month yet," she said, settling into the booth across from me. "Revenue is up 18% from September. Food costs are down 3 points from last quarter. The new vendor relationships are paying off." I smiled, remembering the vendor negotiations from Marcus's early days. His eagerness to please suppliers, his failure to leverage our volume for better pricing, his assumption that being nice was the same as being respected. Carmen had renegotiated every contract within her first month, saving us nearly 15% on food costs while improving quality and staffing stability. 2 servers asked about picking up extra shifts for the holidays, and Derrick wants to cross-train on prep work during slow afternoons. Good problems to have. Through the kitchen window, I watched Marcus plating another order, his movements precise and deliberate. He had become a better chef under Carmen's management, not because she knew more about cooking than he did, but because she had freed him from the administrative responsibilities that had always scattered his attention. Freed of the burden of trying to be everything to everyone, he could focus on what he did best. "Any word from the food critic?" I asked. Carmen's smile widened. "David Hughes called this morning. The review runs in Sunday's paper. He wouldn't give details, but he sounded enthusiastic." The irony wasn't lost on me. David Hughes, who had witnessed Marcus's humiliation on opening night, was now preparing to review the restaurant under its new management. The story of Coastal Catch's transformation had become something of a local legend. The invisible investor who reclaimed her business, the entitled son who learned to work for his success, the immigrant daughter who turned a dysfunctional family enterprise into a model of professional excellence. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Can we talk? It's important." I hadn't spoken to my daughter-in-law since that morning 3 months ago, when she and Marcus had received my ultimatum. She had tried calling several times in the first few weeks, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to frustrated accusations to desperate pleas for reconciliation. I had listened to each one exactly once, then deleted them without responding. "I need to step outside for a moment," I told Carmen, who nodded and returned to her tablet. The evening air was crisp with the promise of winter. Harbor Street was alive with the kind of foot traffic that restaurant owners dreamed about. Coastal Catch's windows glowed warmly, and through them I could see diners enjoying their meals, servers moving efficiently between tables. The subtle choreography of a business that had found its rhythm. I called Sarah back. "Elena," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "Thank you for calling me back." "What do you want, Sarah?" "I'm pregnant." The words hit me with unexpected force. In all the months of strategic planning and boundary setting, I hadn't considered this possibility. A grandchild, Richard's legacy continuing through another generation. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it despite everything. "I'm due in May. We found out last week." She paused, and I could hear her breathing, gathering courage for whatever came next. "Marcus wants to tell you himself, but I asked him to let me call first." "Why?" "Because I owe you an apology, a real one. Not the kind I tried to give you before when I was just trying to smooth things over." I waited, listening to the sounds of evening traffic, the distant laughter from Coastal Catch's outdoor seating area. "I was wrong," Sarah continued. "About everything. I treated you like an obstacle instead of a partner. I encouraged Marcus to see you as someone who needed to be managed rather than respected. I turned your generosity into something shameful that we had to hide. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm about to become a mother, and I can't imagine my child treating me the way we treated you. If someone did to me what we did to you, it would break my heart." The admission hung between us, more honest than anything Sarah had ever said to me. Through Coastal Catch's windows, I could see Marcus expediting orders, his concentration absolute, his movements confident in a way they had never been when he was trying to manage every aspect of the business. "What do you want from me, Sarah?" "I want to know if there's a path back," she said quietly. "Not to how things were. I know that's impossible, but to something new, something better." I thought about the question for a long moment, watching a young couple share dessert at one of the window tables, their faces soft with the kind of intimacy that came from genuine partnership. "That depends," I said finally. "On what?" "On whether you're willing to earn it." "I am," she said immediately. "We both are. Marcus has been different since everything changed. Humbler, more thoughtful. He talks about you differently now, how he finally understands who you are instead of who he thought you were supposed to be." Carmen appeared in the doorway, catching my eye through the glass. She tapped her watch and held up 5 fingers, 5 minutes until the 7:30 reservations would begin arriving. The dinner rush was about to begin, and she needed me to review the evening specials with the servers. "I have to go," I told Sarah. "The restaurant needs me." "Elena, wait. Will you think about what I said?" I looked through the window at Marcus, who was now conferring with Carmen about something on her tablet. They worked well together. I realized his creativity balanced by her practicality, his passion tempered by her discipline. It was the kind of partnership Richard and I had built at Rico's Kitchen, the kind Marcus had never understood when he was too busy resenting his parents' success to learn from it. "Have Marcus call me tomorrow," I said. "We'll talk." "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on us." But I had given up on them, I realized as I ended the call. I had given up on the fantasy of unconditional family harmony, on the myth that blood relations exempted people from basic human decency, on the exhausting pretense that love meant accepting disrespect in the name of keeping peace. What I hadn't given up on was the possibility of something better. Relationships built on mutual respect rather than assumed obligation. Partnerships that honored contribution rather than dismissed it. Family connections that strengthened rather than diminished. The people involved. I walked back into Coastal Catch, my restaurant, and took my place in the booth where I reviewed the evening's operations and made the decisions that kept this business thriving. Carmen approached with the night's reservation list, her expression focused and competent. "Everything all right?" she asked. Everything's exactly as it should be, I replied. Through the kitchen window, I watched Marcus plate another order, his movements confident and purposeful. He looked up, caught my eye, and nodded. Not the guilty, desperate acknowledgement of someone seeking forgiveness, but the professional recognition of one business partner acknowledging another. In May, there would be a grandchild. There would be conversations about boundaries and expectations, about the difference between enabling and supporting, about what it meant to love someone enough to hold them accountable for their choices. But tonight, there was this: a restaurant, full of satisfied customers, a staff that functioned like a well-trained team, books that balanced, and the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had reclaimed not just her investment, but her dignity. At 63, I had learned that respect wasn't something you could demand or inherit. It was something you earned through competence, consistency, and the courage to value yourself enough to insist that others do the same. Marcus would call tomorrow, and we would begin the slow work of rebuilding our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect rather than assumed entitlement. There would be conditions, boundaries, expectations that reflected the hard-earned wisdom of a woman who had finally learned the difference between loving someone and letting them diminish her. The evening rush was beginning, and Coastal Catch hummed with the quiet efficiency of a business that knew exactly what it was and who was in charge. I opened my laptop and began reviewing the week's financial reports, surrounded by the sounds of success I had earned through intelligence, courage, and the radical act of refusing to be invisible in my own life. Outside, Harbor Street glowed with the promise of another profitable evening. Inside, I sat in my booth, in my restaurant, exactly where I belonged. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.